Today, I want to show you how you can move from working for money to making money work for you. And I'm going to use Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant as a guide. What if I told you that the way you earn money today could be the very thing that's holding you back from creating lasting wealth? Now, I know it's a confronting thought, but it's also the foundation of one of Robert Kiyosaki's most powerful ideas, the Cash Flow Quadrant. Now, I don't agree with all of Kiyosaki's property strategies. They're usually tailored for the United States market rather than ours. But this particular concept, the cash flow quadrant, I believe is worthy of your attention because it doesn't just explain where you are financially, it can show you the path to where you want to be. And here's the twist most property investors overlook. You're not just building a portfolio, you're actually running two businesses, whether you realize it or not. Now, to unpack this concept, I'm joined today by Mark Creedon, CEO of Metropole and business coach to many of Australia's top entrepreneurs. Mark's guided countless professionals and business owners to grow profitable enterprises. And today he's going to share with you how to structure your work, your business, your investments to ultimately step into the investor quadrant full time. And that's what many of the people listening to this want to do. So no matter if you're employed, self-employed, already running a business, or just getting started in your investment journey, today's episode will give you a complete new framework of thinking about money, one that could change your long-term wealth trajectory. So let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment, and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect, and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now, here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Have you ever thought of your job as a business or considered that your property investments should be run like one? Well, today I want to share with you a concept that's helped many successful investors fast track their financial freedom. It's the idea that every property investor should run two businesses, one that brings in the cash, the other one that builds your wealth. Now, if you're intrigued by this, you should be. And joining me to discuss this is Mark Creedon, CEO of Metropole and host of the Mastermind for Business podcast. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Michael. Always good to have these chats with you.
Well, we speak every day, but we don't do it formally like this often enough. But because I know that you've helped a lot of business people grow their businesses, I thought this would be a perfect discussion to talk with you about. But before we jump into that model of Robert Kiyosaki's, I want to set the stage with the idea that every investor should be running two businesses. The first is your cash flow business. That's your job, your profession, or your actual business. You may have a business and that pays the bills, supports your families, and if managed well, should actually give you surplus income to invest. And the second is your asset growth business. That's your property portfolio. This is your long-term play, and it doesn't usually produce much cash flow, especially early on, but the aim of it's to build equity, net worth, and then eventually passive income. The key is most people never make the leap to build that second business, Mark. They say stuck trying to get rich from their job, and that rarely works, or investing for cash flow, which doesn't work either. But when you deliberately use your cash flow business to fund your asset growth business, you're playing the long game, and that's where real wealth is built.
Yeah, it is, Michael. I mean, if all you're doing is trying to build wealth out of a job or a business just purely on cash flow, it's a very, very hard grind, I think.
Well, if your money isn't making money for you while you're asleep, you'll never get rich. Now, I know, like you in the 90s, I was introduced to Robert Kiyosaki's concepts, and some of them are very powerful. His property concepts don't relate to Australia, but he brought out a book called Cash Flow Quadrant, and here he said there are 4 ways people can earn money, and where you are on these quadrants dramatically impacts your financial future. So maybe you could walk us through this model, Mark.
It's a pretty simple model. I mean, the way it works is that obviously quadrants, there's 4 of them, Michael, but we start out as an employee and all you do is you've got a job and that's just trading time for money. And the interesting thing is a lot of people, when they first start their business, they do the same thing, don't they? Sort of just trade time for money. So then, Michael, you move from employee to self-employed. And once you're in that self-employed, you really own a job. Right. Whilst it looks like a business, but again, really all you're doing is trading time for money.
Now,
the next.
If I could interrupt you for a sec, Mark, most people think they have a business, consulting business. Only this morning I spoke with somebody, and I won't say his name because I know he listens to this podcast, and he's actually a very successful consultant. He's earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but he's trading time for money. So he's come to Metropole to say, I now want to actually convert that to an asset growth business, which is property. And he's already got a couple of property investments, but he's in a trap. He's on a treadmill. And in fact, I've suggested that he has a chat with you and Caroline, because at Mastermind Business Accelerator, you actually help people get out of that self-employment trap. Maybe we can discuss it a bit later, but I just wanted to, it was fresh in my mind because,
Yeah.
as you know, we only just discussed it. So people get out of the employment field to become self-employed, but all they've done is swap one boss for lots
many.
of them. We call them client, customers, patients.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's true of most professionals, consultants, and, as you say, you think doctors, lawyers, engineers, people in consultancy businesses, they're still trading time for money, right? So they
Yes.
haven't yet scaled to that point where they actually become a business owner. Because once they become a business owner, they then own a system. The business is actually working for them, but they still haven't reached that point where their money is working for them. And that's kind of the next stage once you move from being a business owner to an investor, where you're now actually trading money for money rather than time for money.
Well, if you saw the quadrant, you'd see on the left-hand side there is the employed and self-employed, and on the right-hand side, business owners and investors. And I guess we're both suggesting that people should move from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. Now, that doesn't mean everyone should leave their job. A lot of people enjoy their job and their vocation, and that's why we're suggesting they open that second business, the property business, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you make, Michael, is that when we talk about, having a business, not a job, it's not about going, well, I can no longer be a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer or a consultant or a business coach or whatever it might be. That's not what it's about at all. It's about reframing that so that you see yourself no longer as a self-employed person, but as a business owner moving into that investor stage where you're going, okay, the money that I'm making, the system I own that's now generating money for me, how do I use that money to generate more money? And I'm not just working off the grind.
So I know many of our listeners are professionals, tradespeople, small business owners. Let's start with the basics. How do they begin? I mean, you've said what they should be doing. How do they begin to see their job or business, not just the way to earn money, but to generate cash flow to build a second business?
Well, I think they've got to stop seeing the business as being just to generate money for the sake of putting back into the business, to generate money to put back into the business. So it is this sort of cyclical trap, if you like. So they've got to work out how am I going to generate money and what do I want to do with that money? I mean, obviously you've got to have a plan, right? It's the old saying, a failed plan is a plan to fail.
Yes.
So they've got to have a plan, but a plan not just for their business, but a plan for their investments as well. So they understand, okay, if I'm going to make this amount of money out of my business, what am I going to do with that money? And how am I going to have that money work for me in the most productive way for my future, Michael?
Mark, I know as a business coach, you helped me get out of, I guess, even though I ran a national business, I was still employed doing a lot of things that were below my pay grade. I know a lot of business owners do the same. They still the technician, they're still doing everything. Even the gentleman I was speaking with this morning, I was shocked that he manages his own property investments himself, even though he earns hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in his other business. It's below his pay grade. What's the path to becoming a true business owner where you own a system, so the system's working for you rather than you working?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, you've nailed it when you say you have to have a system. It's interesting because I was actually chatting with a mastermind member this morning about this very point. They're very new and still all roads still lead to them. Within their bit, they've got a great consulting business, but all roads lead to them. So the number one thing is that you've got to have a system for how it is that you're going to get yourself out of that daily grind. And once you've got that system in place, you then need to have the right people in place. So you've got to learn how to delegate effectively. But I think probably the first thing, Michael, is to identify what is the highest and best use of your time. You just nailed it before when you said, somebody's managing their own properties, which is a real, a red flag, isn't it? But, they've got to understand what is the true value of their time.
And they've got to learn to delegate. And I know that's something that took me time to learn. In fact, if people ask me what was one of the reasons of the success of my business, Metropole, that's now our business, was that I actually got my first business coach way back in 2006. And he actually saw my blind spots and he actually helped me grow. And over the years, you've been a business coach and that for the other directors for a long time. But you've seen so many other businesses. For somebody to plan, how do they balance this out without burning out?
Well, I think balance comes from a couple of things. One, first, you've got to understand the value of your time. So you're making sure that whatever time you're spending in your business is actually the highest and best value. Dan Martell wrote that book, Back Your Time. It's not new material, by the way, but it's a great book. So that's a great start to look at what Dan Martell talks about. But what he talks about is there are essentially 4 time zones, Michael. So we've got to work out that we're working in our zone of genius and not in the zones that are either competence or incompetence, where people will happily leave you working in that zone because it suits them, but you get so dragged down into the weeds of your business that you actually don't get time to work on the things that really matter, which is the things around scaling your business, bringing people up, training people up. We worked, Michael, not long ago with a client who had a great business, had a great team around him, and they were screaming for him to let go. Absolutely screaming for him to let go so they could take on a whole bunch of things. But until such time as he got to that point, I wasn't talking about you, just by the way, when you laughed then, but until such time as he let go, there was nothing they could do. So you've got to learn to trust people, but you've got to build that trust, right? You've got to build up their skills and then learn to delegate effectively, Michael.
Trust's a big part of it because
Yeah, it
you're
is.
worried that people aren't going to do things as well as you could. Again, that's
yeah.
where I think having a coach to see your blind spots would help. Now, we've got lots of more questions I want to ask you, but maybe we've said 2 or 3 times about this client, that client. Maybe you could explain what Mastermind Business Accelerator does, who it's for, and how you and Caroline and the team help their clients.
Sure. So Mastermind Business Accelerator is a coaching program, Michael, that involves some one-on-one work with myself and with Caroline. Caroline's a great accountability coach. I often say she's got a master's degree in bum kicking. She's very, very good at that. But we work one-on-one with the clients. And what we do is map out with them where they want to be in 5 years' time, create a plan for it, and then help keep them accountable, every month to make sure that they're staying on track. So it's a little bit like a roadmap. We work out where the destinations and we make sure that we're staying on track for that. And then we have a group component of it. And that's really where we get together 3 times a year at the Gold Coast. We spend a couple of days together. You've been to many of those, and you know how good they are.
Yes.
And the reason we have that group component, Michael, is because we get collective momentum and shared wisdom, right? You get people in the room who genuinely want to help you and will share their wins and their losses to help you progress as well. And everybody, we're very careful about how we curate this so that everybody in the room is all getting in that same momentum, in that same direction.
Well, I'll leave a link in the show notes for people to have a chat with Caroline about that, and also about your podcast, which I enjoy listening to. I'm, as you know, I'm an auditory learner, so I love podcasting. Your Mastermind for Business podcast that you do each week's short and sharp and will help anyone who's interested in business. And if they're interested in coming along to that in the next intensive, which is in October, have a chat with Caroline, because maybe it could be a try before you buy and you can see how it actually works. But I guess when you get there, you see the vibe. That makes a big, big difference. Now, I know a lot of people listening to this, but also those in Mastermind, have got the medium to long-term aim of exiting the cash flow business, whether they're selling, retiring. What do you need to put in place ahead of time to ensure that your property business will eventually sustain you?
Well, number one thing is a plan. I mean, you've got to have a plan for that, right?
You
You've
keep
got to have a
coming up with
succession
that,
plan.
but it's
Yeah,
so
I know, but
true,
it's so
isn't it?
true. You've got to have a plan
Yeah.
because if you say, well, I want to exit in 5 years' time, what am I going to do? Am I going to sell it? Am I going to pass it to the next generation? Am I going to sell it internally? Am I going to sell a percentage of it and leave a percentage in there as a passive income? All the various options that you've got, but you've actually got to map those out and have a plan for it. Then you've got to find the right people around you. And the other thing too, Michael, I think is you've got to make sure that you've got your financial buffers in place and that there is an alignment between your succession plan for your business and your plan for your property so that they fit hand in glove. Because if what you do is you exit your business and your property portfolio it's not quite cooked, it's not quite ready, then we've got some problems.
Well, I guess that's how we plan our clients to plan to become the investors they plan to become, with the powerful software we use at Metropole, which gives them an indication of where their cash flow is going to be. Now, clearly between now and when most people are going to slow down or retire, and some people don't retire straight away, they do it over a period of time, the rules are going to change, the government's going to change a couple of times, the banks may change how they lend things. You've got to do it in a flexible way. But I guess what we're saying is the left hand's got to know what the right hand's doing, because in the short term, to grow your asset base big enough, you do need that other cash flow business. I know that a lot of the members of Mastermind are also husbands and wives. That creates well, we had a long chat about that with Simon Kirstenmacher on a previous episode of
Yeah.
Demographics Decoded. If you haven't listened to that, wherever you're listening to this podcast, if you're in business with your husband or wife or your significant other, it's worth listening to because that creates another level of complexity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. There's some things that relate to whether it's husband or wife, brother, sister, father, daughter, mother, son, cousins. It's interesting, Michael. Caroline and I have coached. We look at probably 80% of the people that we've coached in business have actually been in that situation. And it does bring those additional complexities because somehow you've got to have 3 plans. You've got to have a plan for what you're doing in the business. You've got a plan for how you're going to balance that out at work so you don't end up the dining table becoming a boardroom table, all right, and the bedroom becoming a meeting room. How you balance that out, and also your property plan as well. So it's a matter of getting all those plans nicely aligned.
Yeah, they may not be on the tools, so that often it's the plumber out during the day and the wife doing the books at home. But it's very common that spouses or life partners share business plans. So there's another set of plans. And then there's also the succession planning. You could sell to family members or to members in your team as well. It's actually hard to sell a small business. How do you go about setting yourself up so it's actually worth something?
Yeah, if the business is entirely reliant on you and everything goes through you, then the business is worth only something whilst you're there. So you've got to have systems and processes in place. You've got to have the next level of people. I mean, ultimately, you want to be in the position where somebody else could walk into your business and operate it without you being there, or potentially even without them being there. So the more self-sustaining you can generate, more self-sustaining you can make your business, the easier it is to sell both internally and externally. And just on that point too, Michael, when it comes to succession planning, if you're talking about couples in business, you've got to be on the same page. Yeah, because I mean, how many times have we seen where, one partner says, look, I want out in 3 years' time, and the other partner says, well, I was kind of planning on the next 10 years. So you've got to get on the same page and be really clear about that planning as well.
So I guess what I've learned from you there, or I heard from you, I've known it, and I want to share with the people watching or listening, this is the importance of having a plan, but also the importance of having systems in your business.
Yep. And the right people, Michael, because you can have the best systems in the world. So the way to scale a business is not through systems alone. You can have the best systems. If you have the wrong people, the systems will fail. So you have to have the right people. Even if you have the right people and the wrong systems, if they're the right people, they'll fix the systems for you. So it's a matter of getting this nice balance between the right people and the right systems, Michael.
Interesting. Let's get back to Robert Kiyosaki's model for a moment. Mark, moving from employee to self-employed or to business owner and investor doesn't just require skills. In my mind, it actually takes a significant mindset shift. Mark, what mindset traits do you see in the clients who you've seen who successfully made the transition from the left-hand side of the quadrant to the right-hand to right business owners or to proper investors' business?
Well, I think they've got to look in the mirror and see something different. So if you look in the mirror every morning and you see, the number one person in the business, the person that everything relies on, the person that the business can't operate without you, that's not going to work. So you've actually got to take a mindset shift and see yourself differently. You've got to visualize yourself as being the person that, as you often say, Michael, the conductor of the orchestra, not the person that runs around playing all of the instruments. I think you've also got to, once you've set a plan, you've got to stick to it. So there's an element of discipline involved in this. Once you get a plan, and the plan is to move across to that, moving out of that business ownership into that true investor space, you've got to stick to the plan. And sometimes that means a little bit of delayed gratification. So I was talking to a client the other day, and we were talking about buying a new car, and he can afford the new car. But if paying for the new car means that he's got to be stuck in the business, every day of the week, then we're probably better off going, let's come up with a different system and get the car in a couple of years' time when you are in a position that the business is less reliant on you. And then now you can otherwise, what'll happen? You'll buy the car, it'll sit in the garage 5 days a week.
Yep.
So for me, I think it's discipline. I think it's a plan. I think it's some delayed gratification. Vision. You've got to have vision, and you've got to stop thinking technically and start thinking strategically. So it's not about what you do on the tools or what happens on the floor of the business. It's actually what happens in terms of the strategic thinking and planning for the business.
I think ego comes into this a little bit along the way too, Mark. People build a business, they're very proud. Maybe ego is even the wrong word, pride. They've taken a lot of time, have spent a lot of time in the business or their profession, and the family have missed out along the way. Um, it's hard for some people to let go. What advice would you give them?
It is hard to let go because it's nice to be needed, right?
Yes.
But I think what you've got to do is work out what your vision is. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Because, and what's the old saying, Michael? I've never seen a removal van behind a hearse. Right. So you've actually got to work out where do you want to be in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, and is the trajectory you're on right now going to get you there, or is it going to have to require some change thinking? And I think it is a little bit of ego, and that's okay because the reality is it's very hard to be an entrepreneur without an ego. You actually have to have the ego in the early days when everybody's telling you it won't work and everything seems against you, and you've gone, I'm going to push through and make this work. So it's the ego that gets you there. But at the other end of the spectrum, you've got to start thinking, well, hang on a second. If I keep doing what I'm doing right now, is that actually going to get me to the point where I've got that financial freedom and that time freedom that I'm looking for?
I think that's what most people want. They actually need to be able to enjoy their life and learn along the way. Enough's enough. So just to sum up and recap what we've covered, we believe you need two businesses: the cash flow business, be it your job, your profession, your business, and an asset growth business that will eventually replace your cash flow to give you choices in life. Most people seem to be stuck on the left-hand side of the cash flow quadrant in the employed or self-employed category. And even the self-employed don't realize that they're stuck on a treadmill. I think we've also recognized that to build real wealth, you need to move to the right-hand side of the quadrant, be a business owner, investor, and that requires a plan, a strategy, and I would say a coach or a mentor to guide you. What do you say to people who think, no, I can do it on my own? I don't need a coach. You wouldn't even understand anyway, Mark. My business is different.
Well, don't start me on the my business is different, Michael, because you know where I go with that. Heard that so many times. But the truth is that if that's your belief, then ask yourself the question to sit back and look around the people around you. Have a look at those people who have actually moved to the right-hand quadrant. Have a look at those people who are actually getting the time, the money, and the freedom that they want from their business. Have a look at the people who are no longer in the day-to-day grind and ask yourself what they've done. And I'll guarantee you that in 80% of the cases, they've had some kind of a coach or a mentor to actually watch for their blind spots, as you said, but just give them that guidance. There's no need for you to make the same mistakes if somebody else has already been there and done that and they can show you how to avoid them.
Yeah, I know some people will be watching this, listening to this and saying, oh, these guys have got a vested interest. They've got a business interest. And the answer is yes, we do. Mastermind Business Accelerator has helped a lot of our clients, has helped the various directors and team at Metropole as well. So we're opening the doors to give you the opportunity to share the same business coach that we do. And it's really interesting. People openly share their ideas, their challenges, their successes, their problems. They've let go of their ego because they feel safe in the environment.
Yeah, we often say people come for the content and stay for the community, Michael, because that's what Mastermind Business Accelerator is about. It is actually about building that community, but it's not a community. We're not sit around holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It's not a community of networking. We're just exchanging business cards. It's actually a community of like-minded people who are looking to all grow their business, but support each other in that growth. And we get lots of people doing, like we see at Wealth Retreat, for example, we get lots of people doing business with each other because of that.
Yes.
There's that same level of thinking, and they go, I want to do business with that person because they're heading in the same direction that I'm heading in, Michael.
I guess they know the other people get it, don't they?
Yeah.
So I'll leave a link in the show notes of how to contact Caroline and have a chat and see about her and Mark helping you if you're in business. And even if you're in a professional, but particularly if you're in business with your significant other, because that has its extra layer of challenges, as we've said. So Mark, once again, thanks for joining me. So if you're serious about growing your business and building your wealth through property, I can't recommend Mark's coaching highly enough. And as I said, you'll find a link in the show notes. If you want to take your property investment to the next journey, why not have a chat with the wealth strategists at Metropole? So Mark has brought his business experience to helping run the business of Metropole, but we're big enough to tip the scales in your favor, but the business, Mark, is still small enough that we actually do care. I know that the management team takes serious interest in all our clients. We've helped thousands of Australians build significant property portfolios strategically, safely, successfully. Interestingly, much the same thing as the business, isn't it? Start with a
Yeah.
plan and then
Yep.
implement the plan.
Yeah. I mean, that is what drives the people in the business, Michael. I mean, we're all in business, obviously, and we're in business to be successful and to make money. But what truly drives the people in the Metropole business and in a mastermind is genuinely helping our clients to achieve their goals.
Thanks a lot. If you've enjoyed this episode and you know somebody else in business who needs a nudge to get across to the right side of the quadrant, hey, send them a link to this. Every podcast app's got a little share button that you can send it to somebody else. And by the way, if you don't currently subscribe to this show, click the follow or subscribe button on whatever app you're watching or listening to this. And we'll be back again talking more property next week. Thanks, Mark.
Welcome, Michael. Always good to chat.
Way of having a bit of fun in these podcasts, I have a property trivia question each session and giving you, my listeners and viewers, an opportunity to win a hard copy of one of my best-selling books. At the moment, I'm giving away Michael Yardney's Guide to Investing, and we're also giving everybody who enters updated property report. So I'm going to ask you a question and then go to propertytrivia.com.au. I'll leave a link in the show notes, enter your answer, and each week 3 correct answers win a hard copy of one of my books. Oh, don't worry if you're listening to a slightly older episode. Your entry is still going to count. So I've got a reasonably easy question for you today, especially if you've been listening to me for a while. How long does it usually take to build financial freedom through property? Now, don't have to give me an exact number of years. Please give me a range. How long does it usually take to build financial freedom through property? And I'll give you a clue. It's a bit longer than most people would like. Go to propertytrivia.com.au and leave your answer. Oh, by the way, I've also got another set of bonuses for you, bonus set of reports. I'll leave a link in the show notes to podcastbonus.com.au where you can get a set of reports just as my way of saying thank you for subscribing to the podcast.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset message today, I want to speak to you about finding your point of highest leverage. In fact, most people who succeed focus smarter rather than working harder. And I'll explain that with a story that I recently read about comedian Jerry Seinfeld that I think illustrates this. Back in the 1970s, The Tonight Show, that was the holy grail of comedians who aspired to do well in the United States. If you made it on the show and you did it well, you could explode overnight. But Seinfeld told the story that he watched many comedians rise and then quickly fizzle out because they gave all their good material, their A-class material on that show, and they had nothing left in the tank. They treated that first shot like the main event, not realizing that success isn't about a one-off, it's about the follow-through. But apparently Seinfeld noticed something others missed. He saw that comedy is a writing game. The highest leverage points for him wasn't his stage presence or clever delivery. That's interesting when you think about it that way. It was consistently generating new world-class material. So he built a habit. He committed to writing every day because once he had a steady pipeline of great jokes, every appearance, every special, every tour he took care of itself. Now, for him, that's leverage. Okay, what's all this got to do with me, Michael? You're probably thinking, I'm not a comedian. So let me explain what this could mean to you. In any field, whether you're investing, building a business, planning your personal finances, there's a leverage point. One core habit, a skill, a decision that makes everything else easier and other things irrelevant, I guess. Look, for property investors, it might be having a long-term plan, generating that strategic plan backed by trusted advisors like the team at Metropole, so you're never second-guessing your next move. For business owners, it could be building systems like we just spoke about with Mark Creedon that grow. They help your business grow without needing you in the weeds. For writers like, I guess, Jerry Seinfeld, it's writing. For strategists, it's thinking time. So the challenge is most people are too busy being busy to stop asking, what's the one thing that moves the needle the most? So my mindset shift for you in this message today is, first of all, identify the highest leverage activity. What's the one thing that, if you focused on it consistently, would multiply the results of everything else? Number 2, protect it ruthlessly. I'm suggesting you give it time, focus, attention, like Seinfeld gave to writing. Number 3, eliminate distractions. Most tasks are noise. Cut them out, delegate them, ignore them altogether. I guess that was a theme that we just discussed with Mark Creedon as well. But again, that was for business, but just in general for property, for your life. If you can make this shift, They'll stop spinning plates and start building momentum, because leverage isn't just a concept for real estate. It's a quiet force that separates the good from the great in all areas of your life. Thank you for spending the last little while with me. I hope you got some benefit from this show. But before you move on to the next podcast you're going to listen to, let me remind you I have another show that I produce once a week with leading demographer Simon Kirstenmacher. We call that Demographics Decoded, where Simon and I unveil the trends that are going to shape your future. In my mind, this is a must-listen to podcast for anyone interested in property investment, but also for business people and entrepreneurs. So if you don't currently subscribe to Demographics Decoded, just please stop for a second and subscribe on your podcast app where you're listening to this, or on YouTube. And of course, if you don't subscribe to this show, the Michael Yardney Podcast, why not click the link that says follow or subscribe wherever you're listening right now. So twice a week, you're going to get benefit from my guests and me. And I'd like to ask you a little favour, please. If you did enjoy today's show and you know somebody who would also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney Podcast and Demographics Decoded. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcast, there are 3 little buttons at the top of the player. Or just tell them about it. Just have a chat with them. Now, I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you're definitely going to be doing me a favour in my quest to help as many people as possible to become financially literate. And by the way, I've got a special bonus for you. As my way of saying thank you for subscribing, just go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where I've got a bunch of ebooks and reports. It's just my way of saying thank you for taking the time to listen. And remember, the information that we give you in this podcast is general information, not specific information about your personal circumstances, because we don't know about them. But if you do want specific information, you can always have a chat with my team at Metropole. Go to metropole.com.au. If you really want to learn more, you can always listen to the previous podcast, the many episodes we've already published. Just go back to the old episodes, which each have lessons about property investment, success, and money. Once again, thanks for listening to today's show.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney Podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favorite Android app as the Michael Yardney Podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael, but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?